Hello and welcome. This is the Commander speaking. And what you're seeing here at the beginning of this video is we've captured a Russian player who was here in Military Base Levy, and we're taking him to my office in the white two-story building for interrogation. And because the comms are chaotic and there's so many engines running and gunfire going off, it's hard to hear what everyone's saying. But I'll summarize. We get him in here, take his radio, and the first thing we ask him is, who is feeding your team LAVs and helicopters? This round we haven't seen helicopters, but there have been many, up to 5, captured enemy LAVs that have been used against us. Twice already they've had LAVs on that big hill up there overlooking Military Base Levy, and here you can see the source of them. We weren't certain of this at the time, but when we asked that guy the question, he DC'd and relogged. Now that could be a coincidence, but it's also suspiciously like he's trying to avoid the question that is giving his team an advantage, because someone on our team is doing something that gives them LAVs, right? And if he wants to keep getting those LAVs, he has to not answer that question, so he can't find out who it is and hold them accountable for doing it. Because right now, the fact that CSauce is spawning all these vehicles for our team to take and use, it's not clear that that's where the enemy's capturing them from. What it could also be is that we have friendlies spawning them and driving them to the enemy, getting the crew killed, enemy repairs it, and then they make use of it, right? So it could be someone who's just ineptly using these vehicles. But when we return to the base, after using up our ammo on the hill there, shooting down helos and killing advancing enemies, we're going in to rearm and repair from some guys who shot up our tires a bit. That's why we're driving a little squirrely here. What we find inside the base is it's being captured, and the people capturing it have captured one of those LAVs that were sitting there unlocked, because the enemy can, the lock system in this Vanilla Plus server only keeps friendly players that you don't want in out. It doesn't keep enemy players out. So at any point they can still capture it. Now obviously CSauce had already also unlocked those vehicles that he was spawning so that our team could use them, but right around the corner of the two-story white building there on the left, you can see him hitting us right now, and boom, we're dead. Or I'm dead, and then he finishes the rest of us. CSauce, is this the first time you spawn this many LAVs and stuff? Or is this something you do pretty often?
It's pretty often, man.
What? No, it's like the second time. First time I done it was a while
back. No
back.
exaggeration, this is like the 4th time.
Anybody else seen him doing this?
Bro, this is like the one time I spawned this many LAVs.
Anybody
like
but CSauce want to testify to this fact or not?
All I know is somebody spawned a bunch of them before because he said that, you know, hey, there's a bunch here. But it's also like if he's spawning them for lower people, it's not a bad thing.
Right, but it is bad that...
For diamonds. This is what we're dealing with.
We're chasing the gunship right now.
Unless he's wasting a shit ton of supplies.
Right.
It regens 1200 every minute,
hold up.
14
I'm
seconds.
48.
Yeah, we're burning all of it.
Right, so if I could pick a vehicle that's most inefficient besides just spawning and crashing the helicopter, it's the LAV, because some people might be good with it, but just passing it out like candy to people is not a great idea. Most of those 1800 supplies are going to get ate up by a 20 supply RPG. Also, having that many LAVs just around unlocked, that's how the enemy has an LAV in Military Base Levy right now where they're camping. And that's probably how they're capturing helos, because when you're spawning them for our team, they're out there for the enemy team too. And I think we've discovered the source of the Russian LAV and helicopter surplus that they seem to keep capturing. So please, in the future, don't do it like that. Be more careful, please. Over and out for me.
Give this man a 40%
Alright, let's get ourselves some AT.
We should give him a Medal of Connor for meritoriously doing jack shit.
Get ourselves a Jeep. We'll go kill that LAV and try and recapture Levy.
Oh yeah. Roger that.
This is deja vu since last time we were doing this. Now, don't anybody pile on CSauce and blame him for all that, because It's a very simple mistake he made. He assumed that most people on our team would be half to even a quarter of as good as he is with the LAV, right? He's assuming that he's giving our team an advantage by giving out these LAVs because he gets an advantage when he uses it. But what we're not taking into, and like I mentioned, what we're not taking into account is the incompetency of our team and the competency of their team to capture them. So it's a good idea in his mind, but in practice, it's not a great idea. The question of whether that stays a mistake or it becomes stupidity is whether he repents. Repent meaning to rethink. When the pentagon is not just named the pentagon because it has 5 sides, but pent has something to do, like, have you heard the term pent up frustration? Right? It has more meanings than just that. To remind yourself or refocus or restore, right? Store as in like a storehouse. So the things you have stored up as your habits, your thoughts, your beliefs, when you remake those, that's repentance. It's why in the Bible they also talk about renewing your heart and your mind. So this mistake he's been making, that he should be now aware of, is a mistake because there's a fly in the ointment. There's a flaw in the plan he's got. He can modify that plan and just say, okay, well, I'm not going to give everyone LAVs. I'll just take me and my guys in the LAV because we know we're fucking them up. But when we pass them out to the other guys who just get blown up because they drive within 200 meters of the enemy and get hit with an RPG, rather than staying 600 meters out where you're out of effective range, which is 500 meters for the RPG, 300 for the LAW. Keep that in mind if you're using the LAV versus BTR against opposing forces. With the BTR, you can get within 400. Like, you need to stay beyond 300 meters. With the LAV, you need to stay beyond 500 meters. And the balancing that the developers put into the game is that the effective scope range of those respective vehicles corresponds to the enemy's effective infantry carried rocket launcher range. But back to stupidity versus mistakes. I reiterate that Seesaw's doing this right now. It's a mistake. If we see him doing it in the future, then it's stupidity or it's malice. Because now we know that he either knows better or can't know better. So we either have to get rid of him if he keeps doing that, or forgive them for they know not what they do and still get rid of him. Because the point is to protect our team and our players from that stupidity or from that toxicity. That's the way you've got to think about putting that kind of a policy into practice. It's about protecting the other players. Because to put each of those LAVs that goes to waste because our stupid players don't use them properly, or the enemy uses them against us, which is more than doubly dangerous, because the kind of person who's capturing our LAVs more than makes up for what our good players are doing with our own LAVs. Because the supply cost of each of those LAVs is sufficient for us to spawn 18 Jeeps, pile our entire team to them. Right? We could fill up Jeeps with our... That's enough Jeeps to carry our whole fucking team per LAV. This Jeep is 110 supply, and not this Jeep. A Jeep without the machine gun is 110 supply, holds 4 guys. There's 1,800 supply for a Jeep. That's 18 Jeeps times 4 is 72. So 18 Jeeps is enough to carry 72 people. That's more than I've almost ever seen a team be filled with. For us to have 72 people on the team, they've got to have 50-something. So for every one of those LAVs that spawned, we're losing the ability to transport the entire team for one wave attack if we were to do so. And that means every time we spawn one of those LAVs out of military base levy, that's a wave of Jeeps we can't send out. Which means we are losing one attack against the enemy that keeps us in the game every time one of those LAVs is spawned and lost. And the other question you have to ask is, even if we spawn one LAV is that LAV, when you spawn it, just because you got those kills, Seasauce did. We can do the math. For him, in his LAV, he killed 3 BTRs. Each BTR is 850 supply, or 800 supply, I forget which. I think the BRDM's 850. But killing 3 of those puts you at 2,400 supply you've cost the team just for vehicles, plus whatever the soldiers inside and their kit cost. So that's a net positive for you to spawn that. You've spawned that LAV, killed more supply than it costs you to spawn it. And now I'd like to transition to why it's bad to let your best players or your worst players, or letting the players themselves dictate the server culture. Because Seasauce is a good player, and he's trying to be a good teammate, but he doesn't understand the larger picture. He's just taking what he can see and understand and extrapolate that outwards towards everyone. And because not all men are created equal, moreover, they're not all equally developed into what they were created to be. And a healthy culture, even a server culture in Reforger, has to take a perspective that incorporates all kinds of people. Now, it doesn't mean you let toxic people into the server because they are a kind of people. What it means is you have to take into your understanding and the way you operate all kinds of people that you encounter. In the military, not everybody can be a Navy SEAL, not everybody can swim. Not everybody can be a fighter pilot. Not everybody can be an officer, because you have to have the intellectual and abstraction and language skills in order to do that job. Not even everybody can just drive a truck. You know, there's some people who get excluded from the Army, and they have to get an ASFAB waiver if they're in desperate need of people. And that's why I got so frustrated last year and the year before with the admins, like I spoke about in the previous video. You know, they're pathetic when they don't stand up to the very people they need to be protecting other players from. But when you don't manage and cultivate the culture of your garden, you know, like horticulture, just the same way you would manage and develop and nurture your server culture, you can get this kind of status quo and server meta where it turns into Pharma Reforger eventually, right? Not only do the weeds take over, but failing to prune practices that ought to be prohibited, to quote Dolores Umbridge, can further promote the kinds of stupidity that nobody even realizes is a problem. And that's why I often take the time to inspect and investigate what people's standard operating procedures are, right? And they don't even have to call it an SOP and standardize it. It's just, what do they do? More out of habit and without even thinking about it. Because what had been an idea, because it seemed successful to Seasauce, had become his standard operating procedure. But if you ask Seasauce, he will deny it, just like the other guy on the other team. Because people want to protect their egos. And that's why I said, does anybody else, do we have any other eyewitness testimony to whether or not this is what's happening? And these are one of the main things that I try and do in my persona and role as Commander Felixander, is to manage the server culture, and especially the team culture. And especially for us, it'll be the culture of the companions. The reason I created something like the convoy system is because whatever your skill level is, you can plug into that system and help your team. Now, that's a matter of skill level. If you're just so stupid and incompetent that you can't tie your own shoelaces, we don't have a place for you, right? The place for you is outside the companions. Not to be harsh or anything, but that's, you know, it's about protecting those players who do want to play and can play properly. But most of the time, that kind of action doesn't make for good TikTok content, or you wouldn't think so. You know, now now I find out that making 45-minute videos of me just yapping, that is what people want to see and hear on TikTok, because they're tired of dealing with these kinds of problems in Armor Reforger, and probably everyone's tired of them in all of life, right? Like, why do people vote for a dark horse candidate sometimes, like Mondami? They just want to change, you know, or Trump. You know, you could say it's a political phenomenon where when people are dissatisfied with the status quo and the culture they're in, they look for a figure to come in and be the figurehead to lead that change, even if they don't understand that change. Because if they could understand what the problem was, they wouldn't need that leader. And that's where It can go either way. But that's why in this game, in this round, I was sticking to just me as Commander kit here with my Commander Alice gear and just my little 45 pistol here. Vanilla Plus, they've got the 1911, which is very nice because the fucking 9mm bounces off helmets and armor. Even the American flak jacket stops the 9mm. But with that being said, managing the server culture and my attempts to do that and how important it is why I feel so pissed off so many times with these pathetic admins that fail to protect their positive players from their poisonous players, is because I'm putting so much personal effort into fixing those problems, but on their servers, I'm impotent to actually solve the problem. You know, what I can do on this server, if there's enough positive players, is for everyone to agree that CSauce shouldn't do that, and that every time he does do it, we're going to kick him. If that's what happens. Maybe he won't do it anymore because he'll realize, right? But either way, we got the issue into, you know, we have to do it democratically. Well, democracy breaks very easily. When half the team is poisonous or stupid, you can't have democracy. Democracy is not what actually works. What actually works is aristocracy. And then we call it democracy. What you need is the people who aren't so stupid that they don't have two brain cells to rub together. Those don't need to be the people voting. It needs to be the mass of people, right? Because there's not just one king who has a brain. There's lots of people out of the whole. You know, there's a small sliver of the people who have a brain. But there's a lot of them because there's a lot of people. And when you have lots of people with lots of perspectives from that aristocratic pool, that's who actually makes culture historically. And just like in real life, in our modern world, our modern Western world, the kinds of people who are in charge of these servers, they're not aristocratic. They're not the kinds of elite that we would want them to be. They are bureaucrats. They are the same kinds of pathetic people that populate these servers and have this democratic ideal of like everyone should have a voice. Even the people that we want to get rid of, well, we can't get rid of them because we have to let everybody in. No, we don't. Moreover, we just have to let anyone do whatever they want as long as it's within the rules of like don't team kill, don't say a slur. But what does it matter if what they do is worse than team killing, worse than a slur? What CSauce is doing is way worse than team killing because the enemy with those LAVs is doing way more damage than any one player team killing can do, because we can at least agree to get rid of a team killer by kicking him out of the game, even though he's going to come right back in. And by giving people who don't have the wherewithal to get their own fucking LAV, it's just like I talked about in my Triple Threat Tactical video with the M1 Abrams. If they don't have the wherewithal to get their own vehicle, you giving it to them, you're just wasting that vehicle. Because if they're not smart enough to get it themselves, they're not going to make use of it when you give it to them. But when I see a player like Piasticus, that's a different situation because I know him and I know what he's going to do with it. I'm not guessing. I'm not hoping. I'm not assuming that he's as good as I am or as good as I would hope him to be. I know that he is because I know him and his name. So that's an exception that proves the rule. Just like if CSauce joined late and he was private, I would pass him an LAV, or Beer Bop from my other video, I would give him an LAV because even though Beer Bop's not a good teammate, CSauce is trying to be a good teammate, I would give them both an LAV because I know what they're going to do with it. I know I can trust them to do it because they are the exception to the rule that proves the rule. So if you want to come play with me and find out if you're one of those exceptions, join the Discord in the bio. That's where I post when and where you can find me in Reforger. This has been the Commander speaking. Over and out.